Where is everybody? It's got slim pickings today. So I'm reading this book. It's called The President's Club, as in the Presidents of the United States. And it talks about all the different times when the presidents overlap. You know, so we got President Obama. Well, so Obama's alive, right? I think last time I checked. No matter what you wish, he's still there. But so is President Bush. And so is President Clinton. And so is the other President Bush's dad. So we got 4 presidents that are alive right now. So there's an overlap. And then when President Bush was president, of course Obama, then it was, Clinton's still alive. So there are 5 presidents living now. Well, there are different times throughout history when one president was in office and another president was alive, or there were 2, or there were 5, and there were 6 presidents alive, or there was nobody alive. And the president was all by himself. So when you're the president, you're the only president there is. And the only person who can understand that is the person who did it once before you. And so there's a kind of camaraderie kind of a thing. And so I'm reading about how these guys overlap and some of the stuff that went on behind the scenes and all that sort of stuff. It's really, really interesting, if you like that kind of thing. But one of the things they talk about is establishing their team. So, you know, we elect the president in November, but when does the president actually take over? January, that's right. Because that's when you do the inauguration. Inauguration? Is that inauguration? Inauguration. I've got too many N's in there. The inauguration. And so, so there's a transition period. There's during that time period that the new president has to put in his team. These are the people I want to work with me. This is my Secretary of State. This is my National Security Advisor. You know, these are my Secretary of the Treasury and all that kind of stuff. So it's a very, very important time, of course. Well, today we get to look at how Jesus, or what Jesus did when he chose his team. So up until now, he's been working all alone. But now, and then he's going to pick some people to go to work with him. And so what I did was, I went, you know, we know who they turned out to be, but I went to research how that turned out. We know what happened to Judas, right? What happened to the other 11? Where did that go? So how did Jesus' choice work for him? So I thought that would be kind of interesting. And so we're looking at Mark chapter 3. If you don't have a Bible, that's okay, I think. If my clicker will work. Yeah, look at that. This is Mark chapter 3 and verse 7. And we'll go through 7, I think it's 19 or such verse I chose. It says, Jesus withdrew with his disciples to the lake, and a large crowd from Galilee followed him. You know, you can say the same sentence and emphasize different words, and it gives it a little bit different twist. You can say, Jesus withdrew with his disciples. Jesus withdrew with his disciples. And then Jesus withdrew with his disciples. And Jesus withdrew with his disciples. It's the same sentence, but each one of them has just a little bit different nuance here. And in the Greek, the word with is emphasized. Jesus withdrew with his disciples. It was important to him that when he took off to take a rest, that his disciples would be with him. It was important to him that not only did he go off to the lake, but that his disciples went also. So we get a whole lot of meaning here, because Jesus is going off to the lake. He wants to make sure that he has somebody with him, and he wants to make sure they also go to the lake as well. So we get a great insight into what Jesus is feeling in this one little tiny sentence. And he goes down to the lake. The implication, the clear implication, once again, is that Jesus often spent time by the lake. Mark has about 11 incidences where Jesus went off to be by himself, or off with his immediate friends to rest. Isn't that interesting? Jesus, there's only 16 chapters and he's resting in 12 of them. Do you think that resting might be a priority to Jesus? Or getting enough rest would be a priority? Well, of course it's a priority. We had a professor in Bible college, and we loved that guy. Roger Chambers was his name. And the guy was just amazing. He was so smart, and he was so big, and he was so tough. And we took him to camp. He could do 60 push-ups. He challenged us to be able to match him. This old fellow, he could do it. And we just loved that fellow for his, his well-roundedness, but mostly for his intellect. Roger looked at us one day, or Dr. Chambers looked at us one day in class. He said with very seriousness, sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is to take a nap. And indeed, sometimes the devil would wear us out before we were able to do the good that God wants us to do. You see, the devil realized that some of us are going to do good. Well, that's fine. We are going to do good. That's the way it is. Well, if that's the case, he will give us so much good to do. Do this and this and this and this and this and this and this. And we do nothing right. Or he'll give us so much good to do that we try so hard to do that the end result is we get really tired and we don't finish the task. So he cannot stop you from doing good. He's going to make you mess up the good that you try and do. Jesus was very careful to make sure that he took a rest with his disciples who also he wanted to rest. And so this last week has really, really been hard for me. I mean, as busy days go, so I had to do an hour speech or hour presentation on Thursday to a national group. And then on Friday, I had 7 hours I had to talk. You think I talked for 30, 45 minutes here? Oh my goodness, how much more can that guy say? Well, I talked for 7 hours on Friday. And then yesterday, I had a 5-hour presentation. And then I have to do something again. So this morning, I was at a conference. We're going to be done here. I have to go back to the conference and finish up another hour and a half this afternoon. And of course, there's all the preparation you have to do for all that sort of thing. And I had to fly to Los Angeles in between, make it to the hotel, settle in, and then fly back somewhere in between while I was preparing. So it's been kind of a hard week. So I'm not the person to say, I need to figure out when to rest. I thought about going to the lake. Well, it was actually the ocean, because I went to Newport Beach. But it was about 6 miles away, and I didn't have a car, so I could have walked there, and I really wouldn't have been able to make it back. So anyway, Jesus prioritizes rest, not only for himself, but for the people he loves. Isn't that interesting? So he goes to the lake, and this large crowd from Galilee follows him. When they heard about all he was doing, in other words, the things that Jesus did was so cool, and it just got spread around. Now, we would like that people would talk about us. If they're saying good things. I taught to a group, I was teaching a large group of writers. And writers, write books and whatever. And I said, you guys want feedback on your stuff? And they all said, yeah, I want feedback. No, they don't. I said, no, you don't. What you want is good feedback. Everybody wants to hear somebody say something about it. That's not true. You want them to hear them say good things about you. It's not the same. Well, Jesus is doing stuff, and they're hearing about this. This is the present tense. They're hearing about all he's doing, and people came from Judea and Jerusalem and Idumea and the regions across the Jordan. So the Galilee sits up on top, and there's a river goes down. It's the Jordan River, and there's the lake. There's the Dead Sea down below. So you can see the map. You can visualize it. It kind of goes this way, and then Galilee, Jordan River, and then it goes. It says that if you go listen. Anyway, so Galilee, and then you got the Jordan River. Jesus hanging out in the Galilee. So people from this side of the Jordan and that side of the Jordan, from across the Jordan and around Tyre. So here's my map, right? Here's the Mediterranean Sea. I should have actually put a picture or draw or something. I can do that. Maybe. See, Jordan River kind of goes like that. And then they got the Dead Sea down here. And so they're hanging out here. So this is across the Jordan. So people are coming from this area. They're coming from Judea and Idumea. The entire side is way up here, and they're coming down here. So people are coming from all over the place to hear about Jesus. So obviously, the things he's talking about is the word's getting out. He's doing good. Wouldn't that be cool if the good that we did sounded? We get an echo here, 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 here. Echo, echo, Sam. Echo, we're getting an echo. Am I the only one hearing that? Anyway, so they're coming from everywhere. Wouldn't it be cool if everybody, of all the good we did, was echoed? Maybe that's what's meant, echoed throughout the land. And that's what's happening here. So they're coming from everywhere to hear about Jesus. Oops. And because of the crowd, he told his disciples to have a small boat ready for him to keep the people from crowding him. So Jesus is walking along the Sea of Galilee, and because there's so many people about to, see the word here is crowd him. The actual English word for here is smush. That's what it means, smush. Because they use the same word for stomping on grapes to make grape juice. So you put a bunch of grapes in a vat and stomp them puppies, and smush them up, and it squeezes all the juice out and makes grape juice out of it. They're trying to make grape juice out of Jesus. Here is what's going on. So you can see this crowd going after him and after him. And so what he does is he walks back and forth across the sea, and he gets, it says you can see a disciple behind him in a small rowboat. So if they got too close and they got too precarious, too dangerous, he would jump into the small boat and he'd be able to escape. Right? So we get this picture of Jesus in danger. He went down there to relax, but all these people came down trying to make grape juice out of him, so he might have to escape. Now, the reason I brought my Viper, I think this is they got a small boat. So I mentioned to you about big boats and small boats before. The big boats sit outside. You know, they got like a reef where the land goes out under the lake and it drops off. If the big boats come in too far, they run aground. You can't get them out. So they anchor out. You get down out of the big boat, get in the small boat, and come to land. So the big boat's out there, and the small boat is the one that's going back and forth. And the Chinese have two words, or two characters for boat. This is what I wanted to show you. It's got nothing to do with the Bible, almost. This is one of the characters. This is the Chinese character for small boat. Now, when the Chinese want to make the character for big boat, they add two more characters. Looks like that. Small boat, this side, small boat, big boat. The difference is the small boat has to be big enough for this to be added to it. This is the Chinese character for 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This is the Chinese character for mouth. So if a boat is big enough for 8 people to ride on it, then it's no longer a small boat, it's a big boat. Isn't that interesting? Question. Do you know the story of a boat that was big enough to carry 8 people? Noah and his wife, Noah and his 3 children and their 3 wives. Noah plus Mrs. Noah, 1, 2, 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and Mrs. Shem, Mrs. Ham, and Mrs. Japheth. You see, when the Chinese created this character, they created it with the story of Noah in mind. Wasn't that interesting? Now you would think, well, the Chinese read the Bible, and then they created this character in order to remember the story. Nah. Because Chinese characters were written 3000 BC. And the Bible, Moses, wasn't written until 1400 BC. See, the Chinese knew about the story long before Moses wrote that. Wasn't that interesting? So this is just one example. I'll bring you some more in weeks to come. the Chinese knew the story of Genesis before the book of Genesis was written. Now, this character happened to be created somewhere around 3000 BC. It's a question. What happened in 3000 BC? Tower of Babel. Oh, that's right, the Tower of Babel. Yeah, about 3000 BC, the Tower of Babel, right? And all the languages were confused and everybody went off. And so just about the time these characters were created was equal to about the time that the Tower of Babel occurred. It makes great sense that they would write characters in pictographs in order to remember their history. You see in the language of the Chinese and of the Japanese, but most of the Chinese, because it's their language and other Asian cultures just mimicked it, we can see that the Genesis story is true. Isn't that interesting? And we got to, I think it's Jennifer, we got to hang out with the little people this morning. And it's so cool, you know. God created the heavens and the earth. Make no mistake about that. Genesis is absolutely true. When you go back to work, when you go back to school, you need to go with absolute conviction that God created the heavens and the earth. And the book that he wrote and left for us is 100% reliable. Don't let anybody ever tell you otherwise. Got that? We don't. No, it's not. There you go. No, you don't show it. No. So, they were trying to make grape juice out of him. Because he healed many. So that those with diseases were pushing forward. Pushing. You can just see. I don't know. You've probably seen on the news where there was famine and people were starving to death, and the trucks came in and they were trying to dump off grain or rice, and people just like this trying to, because they love their family. There's nothing wrong with that. They just love their family and they're desperate to have some food so they can feed their children. They're just desperate. This is what's going on. Jesus is in the middle. They're just desperate, and people are just coming from everywhere, just trying to reach and grab and just touch him. Whatever it takes is that they too might be healed if they could just touch him. And this is the creepy part. Whenever impure spirits, these are the demons, right? When they saw him, you know, these are the exorcist dudes. I took a survey last time. Anybody go see Exorcist after that? You did? You've seen it before. Nasty movie. I kind of recommend it, but I don't want to recommend it in church. It is just horrendous. But these spirits, these evil spirits, they fall down. And you can see these guys reaching out trying to touch him, these real people, but then groveling on the ground. And they're just groveling like this. Are these nasty, nasty spirits. Whoa, look at that. You see, and the people can't see them, but Jesus, he can see into the spiritual kingdom. Right? He can see into the spiritual kingdom. We think of little nasty ghosts in bed sheets, and we just get away. It's not like that. He can see into the spiritual kingdom, and these evil spirits are groveling at him, and they're just all over the ground, everywhere. You know, and they're calling out, cried out, "You are the Son of God." And just cried. This is, it's a deep. I'm gonna evil spirit you guys. You ready? I want to scare you. I had to turn off the lights and light a candle or something. It's one of these deep, throaty. Comes way from down, way down here. Everybody, let's try this. Reach down in your throat. Go, try this. I want you to see how far down in your throat you can get. Just I just wait. And he's just crying out. And all these demons are on the floor. They're crying out at Jesus. Ooh, I don't want to be there. That's like no fun. But that's what they're doing. They're screaming out there, "You are the Son of God." Does that sound like a fun time? Guy goes to the beach. He goes to the beach. He's kind of Santa Cruz on the boardwalk. Next thing you know, all these demons are crying out, "You're the Son of God." And ugly, nasty voices scaring the whole world. And Jesus says, knock it off. Knock it off. He says, he gave them strict orders. Don't you tell others about it. Jesus does not need advertisement from such characters. He does not need evil spirits to tell the world who he is. He's perfectly able to do that himself. But what's absolutely cool is this, how fearless Jesus is. He's just fearless. No matter what comes his way, doesn't bother him, doesn't even faze him, just knock it off. He's silent. And they have to shut up. There's nothing they can do. Isn't that cool? So, Jesus went up on a mountainside. He's a mountain climber. I have a friend, his name's Rick. You guys ever seen Half Dome? You don't know what anybody been to Half Dome? Anybody have a clue what I'm talking? Hey, here we go. Half Dome, big fat mountain, right? Big rock. Does anybody not know what Half Dome is? Yeah. H-A-L-F, dome, half dome, look it up. So that's a mountain up in Yosemite Park. And it's 4,500 feet high. To go up, and you have to hike for 8 miles and climb 4,500 feet at the same time. Then you have to walk 8 miles back. It takes like 14 hours round trip or something like that. This guy, he's old dude. He's been up and down it 31 times. They call him Mr. Half Dome. He's the world expert on Half Dome and everything that goes on in Yosemite Valley. Well, he talked me into going up Half Dome. Yeah, June 18th, they're going to take the old fat guy up the mountain. So if I don't make it back on June 19th, you guys come find me. I'm hanging off the side. Help me. And you got to be strong. You have to be strong to be able to climb mountains like this. And Jesus, we see it all the time. He's up and down the mountains. He's either down on the lake or he's up and down the mountains. Well, it's easy for people to find him on the lakeside. They just walk down the lake. Going up on the mountain, you have to make the effort. So Jesus goes up on a mountainside to get away. Didn't work down by the lake. You see, Jennifer, it was his priority to take a break. And he made specific efforts to rest. He did that. There is an example for us to follow in his steps. Let's be like that. So Jesus goes up on the mountains, and then it says, and called to him. This is cool. This is the way to do it. He called to him. We know from grammar class, active voice and passive voice. Active, I hit you on the head. Passive, I was hit on the head. Passive, it comes to me instead of me going into this. Call to him, this is passive. He desired by calling to him. It was his wish that these 12 would come to him. We see here a desire of Jesus. We don't get to see this very often. Now, what was the man thinking? What was going on in his heart? You know, he's busy healing the world and teaching us the truth of creation and salvation. But what goes on inside? Well, here we see that there's a need. Jesus is expressing he can need something too. Isn't that interesting? He needs. What's up with that? The Son of God needs these people around him. The Son of God wants to take a break every now and then. It's hard to rest if you're not tired. So he got tired, but then he'd be great pains to rest. So we see a clear picture of the God and his human limitations. He got tired. Well, Jesus got tired? Well, of course he got tired. But I thought he was all powerful. Well, he is. But in his human form, he got tired. And he wanted people around him. Wasn't that interesting? So he calls to them, and they came to him. And he appointed 12. Now this is out of a very large group. He appointed 12 that they might be with him. He wants people with him. Well, there's nothing wrong with that, is there? To want people around you. So that he might send them. He's going to delegate them. He's going to send them on their way, and so that they could preach. Remember, the preach, the proclaiming, the heralding, the good news. I got good news for you, and so on and so on. And he gave them authority, the power, not the dynamic power, but the authority is that I can designate and delegate what I want to happen, and it happens. He gives them authority to drive out demons. What's a demon? That's those guys crawling on the ground. Whoa, I want that. No, I don't want that. Because if I have that, then the demons are going to come and I have to mess with that. You see, Jesus is equipping his team to handle such problems that come his way. These are the 12. Now, I happen to know, I don't know this from Mark, but I happen to know by good authority that Jesus went to great difficulty and great effort to decide who his team members were going to be. In fact, he climbed the mountain the day before, and he spent all night long in prayer. You see, when I close my eyes at night, I don't pray. I fall asleep. Jesus spent all night in prayer, trying to decide from this very large crowd which 12 people he would choose. See, we don't take choosing our teammates lightly. Jesus did not. He chose Simon, and he nicknamed him Peter. Now watch this. This is fun. He nicknamed him Peter. James, the son of Zebedee. And his brother John, he called him Boanerges, which means sons of thunder. Do you know that John had a nickname? This is the Apostle John, the Gospel of John. You know, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd little Johns, plus the Revelation that John wrote. This is that John. He was called Brontophonus. Brontophonus. Sounds like a dinosaur, doesn't it? That's like that. Phone, like in telephonus, and Bronto is thunder. He was called the Thunder Voice. So when John spoke, it came out like thunder. Wouldn't you like to hear somebody preach that way? Boom, boom, he could speak like that. That's why Jesus gave him this nickname. Isn't that cool? Isn't that cool? This is the Son of God who's got to make sure the world keeps spinning, that the universe keeps universing, and all those things. I mean, he's got a lot on his plate. Jesus has a lot on his plate. He's so busy he has to climb up the mountain and talk to himself about how to solve problems. Remember, he prays, talks to God, talking to the Father and the Spirit. He's got so much to do, and yet he takes time out to give nicknames. Isn't that cute? Peter. Hey, Rocky, I want to call you Rocky. Johnny, no, Johnny, that's not cool. I'm going to call you Thunder Voice. Can you see the fun in Jesus? Can you see the personality here? Can you see the camaraderie that he's building? Can you see Jesus, becoming deep friends with these guys? When you give somebody a nickname, there's something special going on there, especially when they respond. We can see that in the personality of Jesus. Whoa, what a cool picture of the Son of God. Andrew means manly. Philip, lover of horses. Bartholomew, Bart. Matthew, the tax collector, say, boo. Nobody liked him. Thomas, doubting Thomas. We use that phrase, doubting Thomas, right? You're doubting Thomas. Why? Because Thomas doubted. Jesus rose from the dead until he saw the holes in his arms and in his feet and his legs. Thaddeus, James, son of Alphaeus. They called him Little James because it was John and James. They called this guy Little James because he wasn't as important. And Thaddeus and Simon the Zealot. A zealot. I hope I don't get in trouble for saying this. This guy was like a skinhead. He was a nationalist. He wanted to create a new Israel that was strong enough to fight. He was zealous for the Israel to be strong again and kick the Romans out. So he was way over there on the political stream, and Jesus still picked him out. And then, of course, there was Judas the knucklehead, Iscariot, who came from the land of Keroth. Keroth is way, I lost my mouth, it's way up in we would call it the sticks. Way up in the boondocks, way out in the bushes, way out of nowhere, he called in Judas, and Judas came down and sold Jesus down the river. A boat came by, and they were buying slaves. Jesus was sold to them by Judas. That's what betrayed is. You can have this guy, just give me some money and take him away. So the question is, how'd that all turn out for Jesus? Well, I kind of knew this at one point, but I didn't know it in detail. So this week I looked it up. What happened to these guys? How did it turn out? We know what happened to Judas. Oh my goodness, that's kind of hard to see. Oh, you can see it, I can't see it. Simon Peter, Rocky. A rock-like man. Dependable. Calls him dependable. Calls him immovable. Peter, equal to the emergencies and crises. Any kind of crisis that comes up, you can count on Peter almost. Not at first, right? Not at first you couldn't count on him. He was the original head of Jerusalem until James took over, and ended up preaching in Palestine, going to Syria, and then in Rome. And in Rome, Nero was using Christians as human torches. Would wrap them up and light them on fire, just for their amusement. They would feed them to the lions. Let's make, Daniel, in the lion, Daniel. They throw them in there. Wild dogs, burning them at the stake. Peter was crucified upside down. He said, I can't be crucified right side up because that's the way Jesus happened to him. I want to be crucified upside down. But before that, he endured monstrous torture. He was manacled. That means he was chained with, chain kind of manacled to a post in pitch darkness for 9 months. So they, the prison, put him in a deep prison, turned off all the lights and just left him there for 9 months in pitch black, chained to the inside, right? Before they took him out, and they made him watch his wife be let off to be killed. But while he was in the prison, he converted his jailers and 47 other people. And then when he was done with that, he said, okay, now you can hang me upside down. Now you can crucify me upside down. James, the son of Zebedee, went as far as Spain to preach. And then he went back to Jerusalem because Peter finally went to Rome. And then James took over as the head of the church in Jerusalem. He was beheaded. John, Brontophonus, John the dinosaur, the one, the disciple whom Jesus loved, went to Turkey. He created the first Thanksgiving. He went to Asia Minor, Turkey. He was thrown into boiling oil, but he survived. So he lived disfigured until he was 90 years old from the oil, banished to the Isle of Patmos off of Greece, where he stayed there for hardly a year. Philip preached in Greece. That's not oil Greece, that's Greece, right? Syria, Turkey, as far as North Africa, Scythia. I don't even know where that's at, do you? South Russia. Scythia, and even maybe France, they said. He was converted, he converted the wife of the preconsul in Hierapolis. That's someplace up in Asia Minor. And then because the preconsul got mad because his wife became a Christian, he tortured Philip and crucified him upside down. Bart preaches in Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia, that's the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, right? He went as far as Persia, Iran. Did you ever meet anybody these days say, where you're from? I'm from Persia. And they're afraid to say they're from Iran because Iranians and Americans don't get along. Persia is Iran, same thing. Turkey, Armenia, India. Bart carried a copy of Matthew's gospel. Matthew was the first one to write a gospel. Just about 12, 13 years after Jesus died, Matthew wrote his gospel, and Bart carried it to Azerbaijan. Where's that at? Azerbaijan. It's up there by the Caspian Sea. I'm going to map later on. And then he was skinned alive. I bet that hurt. Yeah, it's like that's worse than getting sunburned and peeling. It's not that. Ouch! He was skinned alive, and then he was beheaded. Now, if they cut off my head, tore my skin off, I wouldn't care. But that one had to hurt. And then his bones were sent to Rome. He's got his head in Frankfurt, that's Germany. And he's got an arm in England. I'll bet that hurt. Yeah, exactly. Let's see. Whoops. Thomas the Doubter preached in Babylon. That's Iraq. That's a little bit past Iran, right? Persia, China. Whoa. Wonder if he could read Chinese characters. India. And he was martyred in India. They were the Brahmins. The Brahmins were the uppercase system in India. And so he was preaching to the lowercase people, and they were becoming Christians, and the uppercase people got mad at him for reaching out to the lowlifes, right? And so they got mad at him, so they stabbed him to death. 4 soldiers got around, just started skewering him. They just poked him, right? Whoa. and he was buried in Madras, India. Little James preached in Syria, then went back to Israel. Maybe, they said, maybe he was Matthew's brother. I'm not sure about that. That guy was stoned and then whacked to death with clubs. Yeah, they got a deck of cards out, and they got all the clubs and started hitting him. Boom, boom, boom. They clubbed the guy. I bet that hurt. Yeah, if you're going to kill me, I wish they'd do it in a hurry. Don't poke me to death. Right? Come on, come on. Say it. There it is. Thaddeus preached Israel, Persia, Samaria, Jordan on the other side there, Syria, Iran, Armenia. He was one of the first guys to leave, and then he was either crucified in Turkey or, take your pick, crucifixion or clubbed to death and sawed in half. This is funny. I forget, it's not funny. It was some kind of axe. I don't remember the name now. It's axed in pieces. It's one of these kind of axes, not the kind you cut down a tree. It had a name. I can't remember the name of it. It's a kind of axe that has blades on both sides. You go whack, cut trees on both sides. So they whacked at him and hacked at him like this from both sides of the axe until they cut him in half. Simon, remember the skinhead dude. Political movement rebelling against Rome. Rome occupied Jerusalem, preached in the Middle East, all the way to North Africa, Egypt, Mauritania. Where's that at? I'm going to show you where it's at. In Britain, he was crucified either in Britain or he was Samaria. I don't know where he was crucified. It was one or the other. Sawed to death. Sawed to death. There was a. This is really, really gruesome. There was a journalist who was captured maybe 10 years ago when you guys were in grade school. And this guy was captured. This was right after 9/11 and all that kind of stuff. And I was teaching at a university. They captured this journalist. They put him on a video, and they showed the video of him being sawed to death. Yeah, well, I mean, they didn't saw him in half, but what they did was I hope I don't turn your stomach too much, but they killed him by cutting off his head. So it wasn't like he was dead and they cut it off. He was just sitting there and then they started cutting him. You could hear him screaming. He just hacked away until it came, and then he finally died. This is what happened to these men that Jesus chose. And what do? They still stayed faithful to him. Wow, that's like Jesus knew how to pick them. That's what I want to say. This is the last one. Rich tax collector. He was the most educated. Go to college, be like Matthew. He went to Ethiopia, Southern Africa, Israel, Macedonia, Syria, Iran. Killed with a sword, or he died a natural death in Ethiopia. He was tied to a bed, covered with paper, oil, brimstone, and that's like the sulfur kind of thing, asphalt, that's what you make parking lots out of, and then brushwood so you could have tinder to light, and then burned. Wow. Tied him to a bed and burned him up and then sawed him in half. And yet he remains faithful. And these are all the places that Jesus' disciples went. Now, tell me, could Jesus pick them or not? Could Jesus pick people who would be loyal to him or not? Could Jesus choose who would be faithful to him or not? So the question is, Jesus has chosen us to be his disciples. What's in us? Just how faithful are we going to be? So what kind of Jesus? You can yell at me later. I have no time to make a paper for you to fill in the blanks. I'm so sorry. What kind of Jesus? Jesus is a person who can prioritize. Jesus can set priorities. He prioritizes his life for his disciples. He prioritizes who's going to be his disciple, who's going to follow him, who's not. He sets the priorities for his disciples in their rest. He makes it a priority of his own life that he will rest. Jesus did many things. Remember, he did many things, and the word sounded out. You see, we don't need to kill ourselves doing many things. We still do many things, but we just don't kill ourselves doing it. We do good Galatians says, let us not grow tired of doing good. We still do good, but we don't grow tired of doing the good. Jesus did many things, and he still got rest. He was a conversation topic. People talked about him. Jesus was prudent. Remember, trying to make grapes out of him. I'm trying to make grape juice out of him. And he was good, sensible enough to have that boat back there behind him that he could climb into. There's a bunch of them. Pa grape. I didn't know what else to call this. My daughter watches the VeggieTales. VeggieTales, a little pa grape. So Jesus was pa grape. Jesus was reachable. They could find him. They knew where he was. He wasn't like a monk who hid out in a temple or sat up on a mountain, dispersed wisdom and expected people to deliver it. There he was. They found him. They reached out to him. They touched him. He was scrutinized. When the evil spirits watched him, it says they were watching. This watch word is the same word that generals use when they inspect the troops to see what's wrong and what's right. The spirits, evil spirits, were watching him with a critical eye, and then they began to yell out. He was criticized, yet he was unfazed. He was completely unfazed. Isn't that amazing? Whenever anybody says something bad about us, we're going to get them. We're going to go tell our friends, and we're going to tell stories about them. Not Jesus. He was completely unfazed. The dude was tough. He was tough. He invited people to come be alongside with him. I'm wondering, when are we going to start inviting our friends to come worship with us? I'm waiting. Jesus is waiting. Jesus had desires that he could spend time with others. He was a man with feelings, and he was a man who grew tired, even though he was all-powerful. He set the example for people to walk in his steps. He said, do it like me. He was affectionate. Affectionate, that's cool. Nicknaming his friends, right? He was a sender. He was a giver. He was a delegator. Jesus was also personal. I want to be like Jesus. So the next step is, what do you resolve this week? What are you going to do this week to make yourself more like Jesus? Pick one. Give yourself some homework. Say, I want to do this. Go mountain climbing if you can think of nothing else. Take time to rest this week. And blame it on being like Jesus. Come back stronger and more faithful and ready to give more. Let's have a prayer. We love you, God. We love you. We worship you. We thank you for your word. We thank you for the example that Jesus sets for us to follow in his steps. Thank you for loving us so much. Thank you for a free country where we can worship. Thank you for Jesus dying on the cross. It's because he's our Savior that we can come to you in conversation. Thank you for Jesus. Amen.